Think back to the mid-2000s when video game physics felt like absolute magic, launching Half-Life 2 for the first time and lifting a radiator with the gravity gun, or spending hours with ragdolls in Gary's mod. Physics wasn't just a background detail, it was the entire point of the game. It made worlds feel alive, reactive, and completely unpredictable. But over the last decade, something changed. Video game physics largely stagnated. In most massive modern releases, the environments are completely static, and features that people celebrate nowadays were just commonplace 2 decades ago. Objects are glued to the floor, walls are completely indestructible, and if a physics simulation is running, it's usually restricted to a glitchy ragdoll or a piece of debris that disappears after it hits the ground. Massive commercial game engines have prioritized beautiful graphics while treating complex, interactive physics as an expensive performance hazard that causes lag, game crashes, and multiplayer problems. On June 30th, 2026, the entire landscape shifted. The mastermind behind the physics of the entire 2D gaming era teamed up with a legendary Valve engineer to release a brand new hyper-optimized 3D physics framework called Box 3D. Most importantly, they didn't hide it behind a paywall. They made it completely free and open source for the entire world. This single piece of software is designed to solve the exact technical limitations that have been holding video game physics back for a generation, and it carries the direct engineering DNA of Valve's most secretive internal projects. To understand, you have to meet the architect behind it, Aaron Cato. If you ever pulled back a slingshot in Angry Birds, navigated the physics traps of Limbo, or messed around with classic indie games, you have directly interacted with Aaron's code. He created Box 2D, the definitive physics framework that powered the mobile and indie gaming boom. For the last 20 years, Aaron ruled the 2D plane, but the world of open source 3D physics was a completely different story. It had become somewhat of a graveyard. The industry relied on aging pillars like the Open Dynamics engine, Bullet Physics, Newton Dynamics. While some newer physics engines came throughout the years, the industry remained starved for a lightweight, modern 3D rigid body engine. Box 3D is a completely fresh, production-hardened response to this exact multi-decade drought. While building an ambitious, large-scale survival game called The Legend of California, lead developer Aaron Cato hit a technical brick wall with Unreal Engine 5's native physics, known as chaos. The failures were core simulation breakdowns that actively broke the gameplay. The game relied on cutting down massive redwood trees, but Unreal Engine's native physics couldn't handle the math. Massive falling tree models would collide with the triangle meshes of the terrain, freak out, and begin teleporting across the map. Even worse, the native engine completely lacked support for calculating gyroscopic torques. If a player dropped or threw a rifle, the system couldn't handle angular velocity properly. The objects would ignore basic physical reality. On top of that, managing hundreds of thousands of active server-side entities simultaneously required a custom, high-performance, broad-phase solution. Aaron realized that the closed-box nature of Unreal Engine's chaos physics was a massive liability. He needed an entirely new engine built from the ground up. This is where the story takes a turn into Valve's history. Realizing that native solutions were failing, Aaron connected with Dirk Gregorius. Dirk is a principal software engineer at Valve, who is their physics architect that was behind Rubicon, the advanced internal physics engine that powered Half-Life Alyx and Source 2. Dirk provided Aaron with a private, hobbyist version of his personal codebase, known as Rubicon Lite. Aaron integrated this specialized framework into the Unreal project, and the game's physical world stabilized immediately. The giant redwood trees finally fell exactly as they were supposed to, but Aaron didn't just stop there. Over the next few years, he completely overhauled the code, refactored the data layouts of Rubicon Lite, fusing them directly with the data-oriented, performance-driven structures he perfected for Box 2D version 3.0. While Box 3D still has original Rubicon Lite code from Valve, the rest is entirely new software built for modern hardware. While this was happening, Dirk and the rest of the team at Valve were evolving the core Rubicon engine into a brand new next-generation successor codenamed Ragnarok, which includes optimizations similar to those in Box 3D, and we will be able to see Valve's new physics engine in action in future Valve games. So if you thought physics in Half-Life Alex was great, Valve has plans to make it even better. If you've ever built a massive fortress in a physics sandbox, you know the exact moment the engine chokes. You drop an explosive and the game instantly drops to single-digit frame rates. This happens because the CPU is entering a state of absolute panic, trying to track thousands of individual floating point coordinates and collision points simultaneously. Box 3D handles this problem through three major internal innovations. Instead of using dangerous raw memory pointers that can easily cause game crashes, the engine uses secure generation-tracked opaque IDs. If a script tries to access an object that was already deleted, the engine triggers a safe assertion rather than instantly crashing your game to the desktop. As well, standard single precision systems cause vertex jitter and model shaking when players travel too far from the map's center. Box 3D integrates double precision math for positioning, allowing maps to scale with absolute stability. Plus, when a player welds thousands of small physics objects together, the engine bakes them instantly into a single solid entity known as an Uber shape. The CPU stops tracking them as individual items, reducing active processing overhead. When the action gets intense, Box 3D uses a sub-stepping solver alongside a method called graph coloring. Because the engine runs physics updates at a higher frequency than your frame rate, it catches fast-moving objects that would normally glitch in other engines. Simultaneously, it uses graph coloring to instantly analyze the chaos, separating collision zones into distinct groups and spreading those calculations across every core of your CPU. This allows for massive complex scenes to run smoothly without sacrificing cross-platform determinism, meaning your physics behavior remains perfectly consistent regardless of your hardware. And the launch of Box 3D isn't just a concept or a project locked behind AAA studios. It just officially dropped as a completely free, open source public option. The entire codebase is live on GitHub right now under an MIT license. That means any indie developer, modder, or curious gamer can head over, download it, and build a physics sandbox for absolutely $0 today. The most prominent example is Facepunch Studios with Sandbox. Facepunch completely removed Valve's native Source 2 physics engine and replaced it entirely with Box 3D to manage their intense community scripting. But they aren't alone. There's also Esoterica and many others who have been using Box 3D, and the list will only grow much larger now that it's fully free for any developer. We can already see tons of people checking out what it's capable of with tests across different engines and doing comparisons with others, seeing how Box 3D turns out to be much faster. The open source launch of Box 3D marks the beginning of a true renaissance for video game interaction. For the last 10 years, complex physics have been pushed into the background, treated as an expensive luxury that commercial engines couldn't optimize safely. Aaron's core motivation tells you everything you need to know about this project. He said, "Open source is not a business for me. I develop Box 2D and Box 3D because I love working on game physics. With independent tools matching the capabilities of the world's biggest studios, the next era of gaming belongs entirely to the community."